Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. So, as you all know, if you look at the description on my channel, you will know that I talk about all kinds of stuff in here, and history and things of that nature are one of the things that I love to talk about from time to time. So today, I want to talk about a topic that you don't see a whole lot of people talking about these things. And there are some channels out here on this platform that may talk about these things from time to time as well. But I honestly believe wholeheartedly that we should we should look into these things on a much deeper level instead of just surface level, because these things most likely hold the keys to many secrets about our own past that we are totally unaware of and oblivious about it. So let me elaborate on what I'm talking about, right? Because you guys are probably wondering. I actually wrote some notes today, something I haven't done in a while. And the topic is the catacombs around the world, right? So, as you may or may not know, there are several catacomb systems throughout the world. And when I say several, I mean it. Based on what I looked on when I was looking at this more deeply, it looks like there's at least 150 to 200, distinct catacomb systems worldwide, and the vast majority of these are around Europe and the Mediterranean. That's where most of them have been found. But these things are still being found throughout the world to this day. And they will keep finding them because they're everywhere. Now, the Paris catacombs are famous because it's one of the catacombs that people talk about the most. So let's talk about that one for a little while, and then I'll move on to another one. Um, the Paris catacombs, they are pretty big in scope, but they are nowhere near the biggest. But they're fairly large, and they're considered to be the largest, ossuary graveyard in the whole world. They claim that there's anywhere between 6 and 7 million skeletons in these catacombs underneath Paris. They're size-wise, they're about 180 to 200 miles in length. And the funny thing about this is that only 1%, somewhere around 1% of this place is actually available to the public. As if you go in there as a tourist and you want to visit this place, it's only about a mile of it, a mile something, that you can actually go and see and look. And everything else in there is off limits to the public, which should raise some serious questions. Why is it that only about a mile of this place out of 200 miles people are allowed to see what's there underneath Paris and these tunnels and these catacomb systems that exist. Not only that, people don't ask the questions that we should be asking about these places and what really happened there. Because if you look at the historical narrative of these places, specifically this one that I'm talking about now, you will find out that there's absolutely no way in hell that they had the manpower, enough people, and also the technological resources, whatever they may have been, to dig up these tunnels the way they were dug and constructed. Because this stuff was built supposedly in the 1700s, some point, right? And when you start looking into it and you start analyzing this on a deeper level, you're gonna find out that this narrative just doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit what we're being told and what they're telling us about this place. Not only that, when you look at the skeletons and the bones in these catacombs, you're gonna see, and I'm talking about the Paris one right now, you're gonna see that these things have been arranged in a way that they weren't just tossed in there. It was a big project, a big undertaking, and the bones, they're arranged in geometrical patterns, almost as if it's telling you some sort of story in an encoded manner that we do not have the keys to decode, the means to decode whatever these geometrical patterns are trying to convey and tell us about. And the other thing is, you know, the entirety of the catacombs was available to everybody up until I think it was the 50s, somewhere in the 50s, the mid 50s. I could be wrong about that, but it's somewhere about there. You can look that up. And after they passed this law, whatever, where they shut down almost all of it to the general public, from that point forward, from that moment on, only, there's only that 1%, that 1 mile that people can actually look at and have access to, which is weird. It's bizarre, So what happened was, now nobody can go to the rest of the place, as it is unavailable to the public, and people can't actually take a deeper look at this to try to figure out what this place was really all about and where did all these dead people come from. Because they tell you that, they empty a bunch of graveyards and throughout a certain amount of time, certain period of that time, and then they moved all the bones into this place. But that doesn't make any sense. And like I said, they did not have the resources and the manpower to do this to begin with, especially during that time. If you go look at the data of how many people were around these places, they wouldn't have enough people to do it. It would take an insane amount of time to do this. And then if you go and you start asking AI questions, you will see that the AI will tell you that wouldn't have been possible. So what was really behind all of this is what people should be asking. And why is it that there are so many other catacomb systems throughout the world? Right? So supposedly, at some point, there were like 30 billion people or so that got wiped out, and on some sort of cataclysmic reset of civilization, humanity event that happened that nobody talks about. And this is why all these catacombs exist, because that's where all the bones of all these people that died were put in. And the other thing is that when you start looking at these deeply and you start to see that there are other catacombs, not Paris is the one that everybody talks about because of all the bones that are there, but there are other catacombs that are treated in a similar fashion, in the way that people can't access these places. They do not allow archaeological research to happen in these places unless it's under very specific controlled scenarios and circumstances where you got to acquire all kinds of special permits and stuff, and it's all has to be supervised by some sort of like governmental institution or some people in position of power, because they don't want people to know what really happened when it comes down to these places and what's really going on. So there is the Odessa catacombs in Ukraine that are supposed to be the biggest catacomb system in the world, with a network of tunnels estimated to be between 2,000, 3,000 kilometers, which is about 1243 to 1864 miles long. This is gigantic compared to the one in Paris. And the one in Paris is pretty big, 200 miles, but we're not talking about 200 miles here. We're talking about almost, 1,700 miles of tunnel systems and catacombs in Ukraine, in Odessa. And how come nobody goes there and does historical work and archaeological work on these places? Something is just off here. This thing is estimated to be 10 times longer than the famous Paris catacombs that are the most well known. And that is crazy, guys. It's 10 times longer than the one in Paris, the one in Ukraine. And then the other thing is, there have been many skeletons, human skeletons, because they look just like us, but they are usually bigger, and they have 6 fingers and 6 toes. And in a lot of instances, they also have 2 rows of teeth. How is it that these things are not talked about? We don't learn about these things in school. And these skeletons that I'm talking about that have more fingers, more toes, more rows of teeth, right? They are real, and there's plenty of excavations throughout the world that have found things like this. There have been findings in Mexico and other countries around the world. You can look it up, do your own research. Like I said, don't take my word for it. Go look up yourself if you're interested in this type of stuff. I'm fascinated by it, and that's why I talk about it, because knowing our history, our real history, and what really happened, and trying to learn about these things and what really transpired, will help us understand ourselves better, in my opinion. But as long as we are this species with amnesia, and we keep being, gaslit in a certain manner and not being allowed to investigate these things and look at these things properly, we're never going to find out what really happened in the past, our true origins, and all of these things that we should be asking because we don't know. We do know one thing, though. There were many things that were made in the past by whoever came before us that we are not even capable of replicating today with all the technological advances in engineering architecture that we have. So how do you explain that? And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. This is really all I wanted to talk about. Have a little talk about history and the catacombs because I've always liked that stuff and I think it's extremely interesting, to say the least, to take a deeper look at these things and try to figure out what the hell happened in our past. Because we don't know much about it, I can tell you that much. And the ones that are in the know, if there is anyone out there that knows more than we do about these things, they certainly seem to have a very invested amount of money, resources, and interests in keeping this under wraps. They don't want people to know what really happened, whatever that was. So if you like the channel, don't forget to, hit the like button, share, subscribe, and I will catch you all on the next one. Be safe. Take care. Until next time, my friends.